Welcome back to the Jiu Jitsu Files. Everybody, we're on episode 10. It's a big one. This is a milestone event. We've done 10.
I think we do about close to an hour each episode. So this will be, hour number 10. And if you guys know anything, like 10 hours makes you an expert. So like we're right here. We're masters at this,
I think we talked about this on a previous episode. It's like the 10,000 hour rule is what applies to like mastery. I believe like the 1,000 hour rule, you're kind of like at a purple belt level, right? If you think of jiu-jitsu in terms of 1,000 hours, 1,000 hours is like, if you look at a practice, give or take an hour, 1,000, that's over 3 years. And so
you're right
kind
there
of at that purple belt level. And I think I told you, then there's like the 100-hour rule, which is kind of, you become better than 90% of the overall population and whatever your thing is. You do 100 hours of jiu-jitsu, you're looking at like 3 months. And I tell all my students, like, if you've been training here for 3 months, anyone who's brand new, who has zero grappling experience, wrestlers obviously are a different breed. But once you've hit that 100 hours, any other like regular person that comes in, you're going to have your way with them.
You should have no trouble against like your mom, your sister.
Yeah.
Like, you should be murking everybody.
So,
all these people that bullied you in the past.
Yeah.
You should be finding them.
We're 10% of the way to that level of podcast mastery, which is pretty cool. So we'll take that.
I know there's a gentleman out there that's been doing a podcast for a very long time, but he's like a blue belt, one stripe. He'd just be yapping just to yap. We won't say his name.
You won't say his name, but
we won't say his name for fear of summoning him.
We've said his name many other times on this podcast, though, but we do love him. So yeah, today's topic, Mr. Eric.
I don't know. We're just kind of like, okay, what do we want to talk about? And it's like, let's go to college days. So me and Joey both wrestled at Moorpark College, and our coach, his name was Paul Keesaw. Paul Keesaw was an NCAA Division I champion. He won it for the University of Bakersfield, and he spent his life wrestling in Pennsylvania.
Yes.
So he was like an East Coast wrestler, got a scholarship to a school out here in the West Coast, and I believe the initial university had a scholarship to, like, they cut the program.
Got it. Oh, interesting.
And then he wanted to stay on the West Coast, and so he went to Bakersfield.
Got it.
And then he won his title there.
Who did he beat in the NCAA finals to get his title? You remember? It was Randy Couture. He had beaten Randy Couture in the NCAA finals to become an NCAA Division I national champion.
And Randy Couture had like an amazing amateur wrestling career. I know he was like an Olympic alternate. He wrestled in the Army, and he went on to become like the UFC heavyweight champion, maybe 2-time.
He heavyweight champion and light heavyweight champion. I believe he is the first 2-division champion of the UFC.
So definitely a champ. Our
high school wrestling, our college wrestling coach.
Our college wrestling. So we both wrestled in high school, and in high school, I was lucky enough to make it to the state championships my senior year. I was all about high school wrestling, especially like as I got more into it, 10th, 11th, 12th grade. 9th grade year, I really didn't know what was going on. I just tried, and my dad happened to be a 2-time state qualifier. So like, he started to train me in the summer, and I kind of got better as I showed more interest in it. And then, Joey, you got into wrestling because your older brother wrestled, right?
That is correct. Yeah. And it was like a two-way thing that, one, my oldest brother wrestled, and I remember how cool it was. And then I also played football in high school. When I was kind of in middle school, I was like at the end of my being a little bit chubby phase and was kind of getting over that. So I started lifting weights, and then from lifting weights, started playing football. And I remember kind of things changing. And while I was playing football, it was the offensive and defensive line coach was very adamant about like, hey, you guys really should be wrestling if you want to get better at football. And so I wrestled because it was like, oh yeah, my brother wrestled and it was really cool. And I want to get as good at football as I can possibly get. So that's what got me into wrestling. But luckily, the high school that I went to, Calabasas High School, class of 2005, we were 2 games shy of the California record for longest losing streak. We'd lost, I believe it was something like 44 games in a row, and what was unfortunate was me and 2 other guys.
That's pretty gnarly.
It's an impressive accomplishment.
I mean, if you're on a football team and you're losing 44 in a row, like, you can't take individual ownership of that. Like
Yeah.
it is what it is.
And-
That's like a rough.
And so that was like kind of like the big thing for me was that it was me and two other guys. Like we lived in the weight room. We were always working hard. And one of the guys actually ended up, his name's Alex Henderson. He actually ended up on an NFL practice squad. My best friend in high school was Mark Durant. He ended up playing in the Arena Football League. And I just decided to go down the path of wrestling because of during wrestling season, one, we actually had a half decent wrestling team in our little squad. Like we really cared about it. Where in football, me and two guys really cared about it, but the rest of the team didn't. And we lose all of our games. Where all of a sudden with wrestling, come season, I work my ass off. I'm with a bunch of other people working their ass off. And the work that I put in was directly related to the accomplishments that I achieved. Any loss that I had was directly related to like, well, I could have worked harder in practice, and every win that I had was directly related to the work that I was already putting in.
So now this is like individual sport versus team sport.
Yeah.
Individual sport, you work your butt off, you get the result that you desire. You know, and team sport, like one person could do only so much. Like you got to have a team full of like-minded individuals, right?
Yeah.
You know, what weight class did you wrestle for those wanting to know?
Yeah, I was a heavyweight in high school. I weighed as I said, everything I was doing was for football. I was kind of always comparing myself to like NFL linebackers and blue chip recruits as far as like they would go to the combine, and one of the things that you do at the combine is the bench press. For high school to college, it's how many reps of 185 pounds can you do, and for college to the NFL, it's how many reps of 225 pounds can you do. And I was like looking at like, all right, what are these NFL linebackers doing? What are these college defensive ends doing? And I was able to put up 185 pounds, I think it was like 28 times, and 225 I was able to put up 18 times. And this is
that's substantial.
It's comparable to like these. And so everything I was doing in high school was like, well, I want to play football in college. And so I'm going to eat all the time, and I'm going to live in the weight room. So during football season, I was like 240. And then come wrestling season, I was like 225. Yeah. And as I said, everything was for playing football in college, but then it was my senior year, and it just dawned on me of, oh wow, I work really hard in both of these sports, and one sport my own work ethic like applies and I do well, and the other it's like, well, if I'm on a shitty team, it doesn't matter how hard I work, I'm kind of stuck at how like the overall team dynamic. So I decided to shift from, you know what, when I go to college, I'm gonna wrestle instead of play football. And I stopped eating as much, and I immediately within 3 months went from that 225 to about 185 pounds.
And that's where you've stayed this whole time.
Yeah, that's like where I belong, I think.
I was like the opposite. So if Joey was a heavyweight, like I was a super lightweight. I remember in 9th grade, I was like 100 pounds. So I wrestled 106 JV.
Mm-hmm.
And then 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, I was the next weight class up, and that was 112 pounds.
Got it.
Yeah. And so like opposite, never in the weight room, but like always on the track.
Yeah.
And never able to eat, but like always like starving to cut weight, you know?
Yeah.
So, and my high school coaches were really good too. Phil Guerrero, Alfonso Valdez, my father, and like, you know, they were able to get like a city championship out of me.
Mm-hmm.
And we had, my senior year, we had 3 of us, our 106 pounder, Juan Alvarado, myself in the middle, and then at 119, Edward Randolph.
Got it.
You know, Edward.
I feel like it'll be like maybe even like a different episode. We can almost go into it because of the fact that you did win a city section championship your senior year and went to state, and now it's, you know, look at over 20 years later, you're going to be going to Kazakhstan soon and wrestling for Team USA. But your first year wrestling, how many matches did you win? One. Who did you win against?
Her name was Marisol, and she was teammates with my homie Officer Estrada. That was like one of his teammates in San Fernando Tigers.
Yeah, so like one match, and like, you know, women are awesome and they could be tough, and it was your one win was against a nice young lady.
Yeah.
And but now look at you, you're competing for Team USA.
Never lost against a woman ever. Yeah. No. But yeah, like that's how it is, guys. Like, you know, like none of us, like, you know, somebody who wins like spent time losing, and like that's part of it. Just don't quit. And at that if you would have talked to me at that age or whatever, like I would have. What do you mean you're going to be a black belt one day? Like, what is that? Like,
Yeah.
you're going to have your own school. Like, you just don't. You can't even comprehend such a thing.
Yeah.
I will tell you guys though that my ninth grade year of high school, that's when 9/11 happened, and that happened September 11th. So wrestling season begins like October, November. So I had kind of already known that I wanted to be a Marine, like in ninth grade, right? So it's like, okay, like what else is going to help me? And it's like combat sports, like being tough, and like I knew that wrestlers were the toughest. So I always like pursued it with that like little bit of like, this is going to help me for the Marines as well.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I never thought about wrestling in college. I thought I was just getting ready for the Marines this whole
Got
time.
it.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So high school's over for the both of us. I go to Marine Corps boot camp, graduate, come back, do follow on schools, and then I do like a bunch of other like ATs and like schools that take me out for like 2 years. So I didn't go to college right away. I think I was like 20 when I went to Moorpark, right? And then that's where I met you.
Yeah.
And then that's when we did Moorpark College Wrestling Season 1.
Yes.
And that's when we met the cast and crew. We had Tyrone and Walter Mendez, who are judo black belts. We still train jiu-jitsu with them all the time. Who else was in there? Marco Cruzat.
He's the one that got, I think, us into jiu-jitsu. Sean Riggs, who was a high school state placer, and he was on the team.
Sean Jones.
He was also, I believe, a state qualifier.
Okay, so then now, like, just like a quick scatter shot of people, the people that we wrestled with that are now coaches are Sean Jones for Royal, Stephen Little for Royal as well, I believe, Evan Turndrup for El Camino. Who else? Vlad Kochi for Chaminade. I'm trying to think of who else came through that room and is like now a coach. But
yeah, and like other people, like I know, like John Sanchez, he ended up being a firefighter. Like everyone, like took on like tough guy jobs. Sean Riggs became a Marine as well.
Adrian Pachone, who's a lawyer and a coach for Chatsworth. Who else? I mean, just like the who's who of like whoever stuck it out became like an elite.
I also remember actually while we were college wrestling, there was a young middle schooler that would come and train with us all the time. And this kid was a savage. And he would like, even he was probably around like 110, 115 pounds. And so he would go with like the smaller guys and he'd mess them up consistently. After training, he would like strap weights on himself and he would climb ropes.
Yeah. So I don't know if you could do this now, but like we legitimately had a middle school kid with us in a college room. And he was holding it down. He would scrap. He was not a baby. He put in tons of work. He would do the extra. And he was just like a freak of nature. And he goes on.
He goes to Penn State. It's Morgan McIntosh, I believe. I want to say he's a four-time All-American.
For sure.
Yeah.
And maybe even like a 2-time finalist.
Yes.
A California state champ.
Yes.
Right? Just amazing person. I believe he's a captain in the Army or a major.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, he went Army route. He's a beast. And like just kind of crazy. That was my first time like seeing like an elite kid come up.
Yeah.
And like knowing like, oh dang, like this guy's going to be something special.
Yes. We all knew that because of, especially wrestling, even at the junior college level. At the junior college level, you still get some tough dudes in there. There were guys that were like state champs or state placers that we'd regularly wrestle against that maybe just like didn't have the grades to go to a good university, or also like just, especially at the Division I level, it's highly competitive. And so a lot of these guys were like good enough to get into NAIA schools, Division 3 and 2, but like they wanted to go Division 1. And so you would get a lot of these kind of former state champions, state placers that would still wrestle at the junior college level.
And everybody also wanted to wrestle for Coach Paul.
Yeah.
Because at this point, Moorpark's like back-to-back state champions, like Coach Paul's the man. You have a D1 a national champion as your coach.
Yeah.
And like I think we showed up to the Moorpark room like in good shape with like adequate fundamentals, but like that's where we learned like the next level.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And like Coach Paul like turned me on to wrestling in a way of like, oh, I thought I knew wrestling, but like he was like a black belt like
Oh yeah.
for sure.
And it was like a different level, like the difference of what a typical high school wrestling practice is versus once again, even at the junior college level, it's pretty substantial. It was like we would run 8 to 10 mile warm-up runs. Like the wrestling and the drilling is intense. And as I mentioned, like all of our training partners, they were all like legitimately solid people, like a lot of people that in the high school level placed, but then also the fact that you're just getting exponentially better in the junior college room. I actually remember there was one season, and like in high school, I was okay. I did pretty well against kids that did well, but I never went to state or placed in state. And I remember there was one time, because that first year that we wrestled at Moorpark College, I had redshirted. And so I'm still 18 years old, and I would do these off-season USA wrestling tournaments. And there was one season, and I remember I was napping in between my matches.
So for those of you like don't know, like at like a wrestling tournament, maybe they pull out the bleachers.
Yes.
And like you could lay down in the bleachers, and it's your homie's job to get you ready when somebody calls you.
And that's literally what happened. I was like fast asleep, and I had a friend come up and was like, "Hey, Joey, they've been calling your name for the past couple of minutes." I was like, "Oh," and I just kind of like no warm up, just kind of walked to the mat, all still half asleep. I get into the match with the guy, and it wasn't a difficult match. I think I ended up winning the match. It was like 8 or 9-0. And then I handed in the bracket, and the person looked at the bracket and looked at the name of the person I just beat. It was like, "Oh my God, you beat this guy?" And I was like, "Yeah, so." And I remember I looked the person up. He had placed, I think it was 5th or 6th in state in the year prior. And he actually had a match against Jake Varner. And I think he was like the only person at the state tournament that even went to like the second period against Jake Varner, who then later became an Olympic gold medalist. And it was just, and I remember like telling Coach Keesaw about it and being like just so pumped that like, "Hey coach, I just beat this guy that had placed in state the year prior." And his response was like, "Yeah, you definitely should have. Like, you're a college wrestler now, and he's a high school wrestler." And it a little bit took the wind out of my sails, but it was this realization of like, oh yeah, I am in a place where like the expectations are much higher.
Yeah, this is like a room where like once the doors were closed, like your skill level jumped up whether you wanted it or not. And I remember in my high school room that like I was always one of like the top hardest workers, right? But when I got into the college room, it was like, oh man, like what are we training to be Navy SEALs here? Like we're all fucking crazy. We're all going hard. And now you have a room full of like young wannabe alphas who are just like ready to kill each other. And like now like fights are breaking out left and right. People are always trying to like get on each other's nerve. It was like a weird like, but like never like we were all brothers too.
Yeah.
It was like a weird like
super competitive. That was like, yeah, like no matter what, you don't let anyone get anything on you. And also like I feel for those who don't know, like in the jiu-jitsu world, but like in the wrestling world, it is a completely different dynamic because of people can be your best friend, but a lot of times like on both a high school and a college wrestling roster, where jiu-jitsu is like, "Hey, I want to compete in this tournament." And even if it's you and your buddy, you guys both just compete the same weight class, where in the high school and wrestling roster, there's one spot. And so you can be best friends with the guy, but if you guys are like around the same weight, it's either one, you're not getting a varsity spot, or two, you have to go to a completely different weight class while your homie gets to keep it. So like the nature of the sport is constantly competitive because there are people that the people that you train with the most are the people that you bond with the most. Yet at the same time, you guys are often vying for the same spot that there's only one of.
Yeah, so it gets to be a weird dynamic where like the guy you're training with the most is also your biggest rival, and then you're also gonna do that Monday through Friday, you know. And so it's you get used to it, you learn from it, and it does make you better and sharper. So like we just got a room full of killers. I think my first year, like I kind of didn't do. I think I won like half my matches, right? But like that was still okay because at that weight class, I think it was 125. Like it was very competitive, right?
Yeah.
And if I had just finished my high school career at the 112-pound weight class, and I gained all of whatever the difference is to make 125, and I didn't have to cut, so I was still very small. Like even right now, I walk around like 145, right? But It's just kind of like one of those things of like as you're growing, your body's developing, like you're getting stronger. Now you could use all this muscle,
Yeah.
and now you have a gas tank because like, yeah, 5, 6 miles, whatever, like it's no sweat. It's part of the warm up.
Yeah.
You're in such a phenomenal shape that you're in such a good shape that a new battle strategy evolves is like, do whatever you got to do. Just take it to the third period and you'll win by
Yeah.
conditioning. And like, dang, dude, I don't know how many matches I was like, okay, like, I'm just going to keep working like a crazy person. Third period, I still have energy. This guy's dead,
Yeah.
and like just being able to like take down, let him go, take down, let him go, ride him out,
Yeah. And I remember like it's interesting because like you learn about yourself and how to how to win. I remember in high school I was pretty good and like I'd beaten some pretty good people, and then all of a sudden in college, same thing. I had redshirted the very first year, which was like a great opportunity because you're still training with all these monsters, but now there isn't really any expectation or pressure to be competing. It's just you're just taking this year to develop your skills, develop your conditioning, and get better. And it was the second year that at Moorpark College, where I was a 184 pounder. And I remember like at the very beginning of the season, I was losing the vast majority of my matches. I remember kind of being intimidated often. And in the beginning, I would lose a lot of matches. And then there was one day, it was a tournament. And I remember it was like in the middle of a match. I remember like I had gotten hurt, but I felt while I was wrestling the guy, I was like, I should beat this guy. And it was like, you know what, Joey, like, we are not going to lose. You are not allowed to lose this match. And I remember kind of digging a little bit deeper and eking out a win. And that was kind of like the beginning of like a pretty good tear that I went on. I believe I actually ended up getting most improved wrestler that season at Moorpark because it was just this awareness of, oh, got it. There's a huge mental component that goes with winning.
There's times when you're going to be like in a match and it's going to be so crazy you won't remember anything. But there's also times when like time stands still and you're checking in with yourself, like, come on, you could do this.
Yeah.
Like, it's like dig deep, find a way, or whatever your mental talk is, because you could also have negative mental talk.
Yeah.
And I've had that before too, like, oh, you should have done more. Like, and the match is still going on.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Or even like you have a premonition of you fucking tapping or losing, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, no, like rally, believe in yourself. Like, you could do this. And I remember, Joey, my senior year, like, we have this city section championship, right?
Mhm.
And like, I got taken down first.
Okay.
And I remember being like, same thing, like talking to myself, like, no,
Yeah.
don't let this go. You could do this. Like, come on. And then like being able to like willpower a reversal,
Yeah.
willpower a tilt, like, okay, like back at it. But there is something to that too. And maybe if you're a new grappler, like you can't talk to yourself, you can guide yourself to winning, but it is like an emotional, spiritual thing, right?
Mhm.
You're talking to yourself. Sometimes it's a top-down view or a fucking out-of-body experience, right?
Yeah.
But that's like one of the things that we love about this sport because it introduces you to yourself, you know,
Yeah.
at a different level.
And it's like what we've been talking about on, other episodes, just like the people that you kind of get to meet, and that it is, once again, your vibe attracts your tribe. And just by being a wrestler inside of a wrestling room, you're going to be surrounded by very like-minded individuals. And like everyone was kind of like a work hard, play hard kind of person. And we got into so many different shenanigans, but at the same time, like, man, we all just worked our asses off day in, day out. And it was like the bond that we created was just so cool. And it was like, looking in retrospect, the fact that, yeah, we can like mention like Morgan McIntosh was like a middle school kid that was in our room. And then all of a sudden he wrestles at Penn State and he's, becomes this 4-time All-American. And then I also remember that with like, as you mentioned, Walter and Tyrone earlier, and how they were like pretty high level judo guys, and they would throw parties at their house all the time too, because they definitely like to play hard as well as work hard. And I remember back in those days, it was like Ronda Rousey, but it wasn't like Ronda Rousey, the UFC champion. She was just like Ronda Rousey, a girl who was like really good at judo. I don't even know if she took the bronze medal at the Olympics.
No,
yet.
at this point,
Yeah.
she's just like the friend of a friend who was like, we would do all these parties in like Simi Valley. That's where they were.
Mhm.
And like, that was their friend from judo. And she would come around, but she was like kind of like to herself. And
Yeah.
we really didn't talk to her either. But she was around for like part of our life. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Like anytime they threw a party, she would like typically be there. And it's just, and it's like there's so many people that like they become something, you just don't realize it in the moment. To you in that moment, and like we've talked about in a previous episode how like Gordon Ryan was Gary Tonon's just little homie as a purple belt when he stayed at the house, or Morgan McIntosh, this middle school phenom that we didn't realize would later be like a Penn State 4-time All-American, or Ronda Rousey, just a ladies at the parties with us. And, you find yourself in these kind of interesting circles that, especially as time goes on, you're like, oh, wow, like we were kind of shared vicinity with a lot of these people.
Yeah, like sometimes people say like you get the rub, and like
Yeah.
the rub comes up and it comes down too. Like you don't
Sure.
really know who you're influencing as well. So like that's like something to keep in mind. Like there's a lot of people that you interact with. It's important that you treat everybody good, because like they'll remember that. I'm pretty sure that Morgan McIntosh would beat the shit out of me like now, but like when he was younger, I probably got a takedown or two on him. But he was 14,
Yeah. Same, because I definitely remember wrestling Morgan, and I'd taken him down a couple times. He'd also taken me down a couple times.
But he'd give it back too. Like,
but it's always cool to be able to be like, oh yeah, like that guy, that monster right there. I've taken him down before, and you don't need to add any extra context to it.
Riggs ended up joining the Marines too.
Yeah. I think I mentioned that a little bit ago. Yeah.
Yeah. This is a small world of like, what kind of person like pursues combat sports, military, and like there's a nice big overlap.
Yeah.
And one of the things that like I enjoy, like regardless of all of it, is just being part of the circle, dude. Knowing like you got your boys around you, your little circle, the guys you hang out with and train with and stretch with, and like you get that. I enjoy that still, like in jiu-jitsu. Like even though I'm out of the Marine Corps, like I still have my rank structure, like our little bit of our like different family,
Yeah. And it's interesting that you mentioned like the overlap, because it was, I think for both of us, the time spent wrestling at Moorpark College was a little bit of the catalyst getting into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Because I remember for me specifically, Marco Cruzat, who you had like mentioned, who was in the room. I believe we also mentioned him on a previous episode talking about Bushido Battlegrounds and how he was the main coach of my competitor, Enrico Coco. But Marco was also one of our best friends.
And I think at this point he was a purple belt under Enrico Coco.
I didn't know that he was under Enrico Coco, because he was under, I know for a fact, Kenny Bond eventually.
No, but before this, remember Marco came from Florida.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's the only, why do we know Enrico Coco? Because that was his,
Marco. Wow.
Because that was his coach.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's like a full circle
so
moment.
he might have been a blue or a purple belt, right? Because Marco was younger too.
And so like,
he was older than us.
Yes. And Marco would...
Yeah, he's from Peru.
Yeah. And so we were at Moorpark College, and at that time he was doing jiu-jitsu at, I believe it was called Simi Valley Jiu-Jitsu, which then later became Street Sports Simi Valley. And for geographically, Simi Valley and Moorpark, they're both like adjacent towns in Ventura County. And so Marco, and there was a couple other guys that would come in that weren't wrestlers. They were jiu-jitsu guys.
So this is kind of cool. Like think about our college room. It's a wrestling room, but then you have these judo black belts in there that are there to learn wrestling, and you got the jiu-jitsu guys that are learning wrestling as well. And we had a handful of like MMA fighters too, right?
Yes.
And it's like, okay, like look at this is like what, 2005, 6?
Yes.
And like these guys are training back then. Didn't Chuck Liddell like come into the room sometimes?
Because of Chuck Sandlin, who was a Moorpark College alumni, was Chuck Liddell's main wrestling coach during his time in the UFC. And so Chuck Sandlin, who wrestled under Paul Keesaw, would occasionally come in and do practices with us, and so we brought in Chuck.
And we also at this time have Coach Aaron Jackson as well.
Yes.
Who held the program after Coach Paul moved to Fresno.
Fresno, that's correct.
And that's where he's currently at right now.
And so, but Marco and a couple of these other guys that were jiu-jitsu guys, it was like during wrestling practices, jiu-jitsu and wrestling, they're very different sports, but they're also still very similar. And so I remember Marco, and there's a couple other people, they were like in the wrestling practice, but they weren't wrestlers per se. And so like during wrestling practice, we'd all kind of like beat them up. We'd take them down at will. We'd pin them at will. But then every now and then after practice, they'd be like, hey, do you guys want to do a little bit of jiu-jitsu? And, obviously we were all fans of MMA, so it's not like we were oblivious to what it was. And so it was like, yeah, cool. But all of a sudden, here are these guys that we were regularly taking down, and now they're tapping us out
Yeah,
on a
because
regular basis.
now, like, like you could use guard now.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, the guard is like the wrestler's kryptonite, and we're
Yes.
diving right in.
Yes.
Diving into triangles, giving up arm bars, giving up our back. And it's like, oh, this is fake. I would never be on my back in the first place, right? Because it's like,
sure.
But it did start start the bug right there of like, okay, like submission grappling.
So, oh wow, like I for a second I thought I was a better grappler than you, but like under this different kind of rule set, it's still legitimate. You're better than me. Like, okay, like I guess we have things to learn from one another, which I think created this beautiful friendship. And that was like what kind of started going to these like open mats on a regular basis. And while at the same time that, these jiu-jitsu guys that were doing wrestling were able to tap us out, there was also a level of, as a college wrestler, or just as a wrestler who's pretty good at wrestling, when you go into a typical jiu-jitsu room, you're not exactly a typical white belt anymore. You are, because of the fact that you have base and an understanding of movement and an understanding of body mechanics and weight distribution, you're not exactly a white belt in that sense. In fact, like there was a lot of blue belts and purple belts that we would give problems to, but at the same time, there were other kind of blue belts and purple belts that would tap us out from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember it, once again, kind of being this interesting thing of like, okay, here's this new sport that it seems I can do quite well in, but I still also have a lot to learn. And that, like, it's interesting that this guy who, when I lock up with him, I feel stronger than him and I feel I can move him around, but sometimes he'll get me in these weird chokes with his legs, and he'll get me in these things with his legs that make my arm hurt. I'd like to learn a little bit more of what all this is. And so I feel it was like our time wrestling at Moorpark College that then became a gigantic catalyst for our jiu-jitsu journey as well.
It was something that we kept with us, because even now we get to the house, we have the mats, we're training full time. Not so much at John Jocks. We don't really do too much stand up, but we'd have wrestling days at the house all the time, right? Yeah. And we never and then we started to teach coach wrestling for Beat the Streets, and then that was a cool experience, because like we're getting to like train all these little ones in fundamentals of wrestling, but Beat the Streets provides like really good coaching as well. And so we get to do all these seminars. Like we had a seminar with Triple C, what's his name? Henry Cejudo.
He
right?
came to one.
So this is before he's really an MMA fighter.
Yeah, and you mentioned another coach,
Valentin Kalinka,
who's Helen Marolis's coach.
Dude, we had one with Kyle Schneider. We just like all these like things that make us better grapplers, but because we're coaches, we get to partake in like this extra curriculum, extra knowledge, but we're grapplers, so we're like, oh, that's in the database right there. Like these are our new techniques, and it was really cool. Wrestling is a great sport. It is a martial art. It keeps you fit. Wrestlers are never bullied. They're never like, you're not going to take something away from me. Like we're going to stand up and protect ourselves and others around us, but it makes you into like a humble person. And I kind of sometimes say, like, if you look at our wrestlers, like let's say amateur wrestlers like NCAA and all the Olympians and stuff like that, as a whole, wrestlers are never out there like in the media or in like the world causing trouble. You'll never hear of like a wrestler like getting arrested for like freaking throwing a party or a rage or flashing a gun. Like they're too busy like training, or they're away from that life. Drugs are prevalent in all cultures, but like we actually end up being the ones that like, oh no, that's like not our thing, because we know that's a detriment to our athletic performance, right? Yeah. Like, so it's like a real like, it's a real pure martial art where like there is no financial reward. It's just self-pride and like just a little bit of love.
I remember also, like, in high school, during football season, it was quite common that, you have your football game Friday, and then Friday, Saturday night, you're out partying, everybody's drinking, even though you're not supposed to be. But then wrestling was different, because then come wrestling season, the practices are just too intense. And then we also had a lot of tournaments on Saturdays and Sundays, and we also had dual meets that were in the middle of the week. So like during wrestling season, there was just no time to be partying at all. And then add to the fact that, you know, it's not uncommon that you're cutting weight. So it's like, I can't be drinking tonight. I have to lose 10 pounds tomorrow, you know? And so,
so now let's do college, right?
Yeah.
College is you're going to school, you're training your butt off, you're competing, you're working.
Yeah.
And like, you know, I think like now I have my military obligation.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, okay, you have no time for nothing.
Yeah.
And then when you spend all your time training hard, like the last thing you really want to do is like get into any fights or like, you know, like you're always just tired. You just want to rest. You just want to be by yourself, you know?
And it's like Dan Gable always says, after you've wrestled, everything else in life is easy, because it really is. It's such an ass kicker of a sport. And it's interesting the kind of, you know, similarities and differences of wrestling and jiu-jitsu. And like is like in the simplest forms, I always just tell people wrestling is simpler but harder, and jiu-jitsu is like more complex and complicated, but it is a little bit easier because there is a guard and you can hang out on your back and you're not expending the same kind of energy. And just in my experience between the two, the people that are like we consider hard workers in wrestling, when wrestling practice is over, they're running extra sprints and they're doing uphill things with weights, and they're just everything is about more physical exertion. And when we think of a lot of the hard workers in jiu-jitsu, I mean, Gordon Ryan talks about this all the time of like the extra work that people don't want to do is studying film and understanding the mechanics, because, you know, taking someone down, it's a lot of like, you know, you go to different wrestling seminars and everything, and people kind of teach a lot of the same things with some nuance. And a lot of times like, well, why isn't this shot working? Well, it's like, well, you need a little more oomph inside of it.
Yeah.
Where in jiu-jitsu, it's like, well, why isn't this submission working? Well, it's like, let's get into the mechanical details. If you need to turn your shoulder a little bit more to the left and you need to make sure you're grabbing at the end of the lever instead, and it's all these extra mechanics. So it's more complicated. It's to finish a submission is a lot more nuanced. But at the same time, because of so much of the game of jiu-jitsu, you can play off your back. There's a little bit that it's a little easier, but it is more complicated. But wrestling, it's the people that excel in wrestling tend to excel in everything in life because of the fact that it's just, you know, you understand what it's like to have your ass kicked day in and day out, and all the extra work that's required just to be half decent at it is pretty substantial.
Whenever I'm having like a conversation with somebody, like what's the difference between like jujitsu and wrestling, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I'll start off with like, well, jujitsu is referred to as like the gentle art. You know, you could start on your butt if you want to. You could put your legs in front, and like for wrestling, if you put somebody on their back, the match is over.
Yeah.
Now for wrestling, you could put them on their back as hard as you want, you know, and like that becomes the hard aspect. So it's like the yin and yang, right? You have a hard martial art and you have a soft martial art. And when you blend the two together, ooh, now like you're a freestyle grappler. You're something different, right? And with the gi, without the gi. And if you ever watch like NCAA wrestling now, it looks just like some jiu-jitsu scrambles, some jiu-jitsu positions, right? And a lot of the kids coming up now are jiu-jitsu black belts. Like they're young black belts out there. And if you go to any NCAA room, like that's what it is. It's just young black belts on the mat killing each other day in, day out.
And I think it goes both ways. You're starting, like, I think the hybrid is starting to be developed more and more, because we're starting to see more of these, as you mentioned, these high level wrestlers that are also doing jiu-jitsu. But then you're also starting to see a lot of these guys that are killing it in the jiu-jitsu game are also like pretty well respected wrestlers. It
is very cool now that like you start one place, you end up at the other place.
Yeah.
You know, like you have jiu-jitsu guys going back to school to go learn how to wrestle, right? Or and doing tournaments and jumping in there and stuff, or even like jiu-jitsu guys are doing the real American freestyle wrestling. Yeah, but like on paper they should not be there, right?
Because like, you know, in that regard we have like Rafael Lovato, world champion in jiu-jitsu. All of a sudden now he's wrestling at, I believe, an NAIA
in Oklahoma
university, and he's killing it in wrestling. And then on the other end of that spectrum, we have people like Jason Nolf out of Penn State. And like, obviously for the longest time, these high level wrestlers have all been going to MMA, but now as more opportunities are starting to present themselves in the jiu-jitsu scene, we're starting to see people like Jason Nolf, multiple time NCAA champion, who are actually stepping into the jiu-jitsu scene. And we also saw it with Helen Maroulis, who ended up taking gold at IBJJF Worlds at the blue belt level.
Then there's also like, so then what, the hybrid, right? The guy who could go both directions was Dorian Olivares.
Yes.
Do you know who this guy is?
Of course, yeah.
So
he's a new wave.
So but then I didn't know that he was like top 10 in jiu-jitsu and also top 10 in wrestling.
Correct, yeah.
Right? So he could have gone
either
whatever, right?
Yeah.
And he chose jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
You know, like, so it's pretty cool. Like there's so many aspects now for a young person to excel. Also, this, you know, we talk about wrestling, college wrestling. The number one growing sport in college is women's wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
You know, now women have so many opportunities that they didn't have before.
Yeah.
And like all these colleges are coming online. That's more scholarships. And before I get all carried away, like I coach a college jiu-jitsu program, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a Division I program. We have 100 spots. You know, we're working on getting scholarships at CSUN. Like, so like, dude, jiu-jitsu is in colleges now.
Yeah.
You know, like it's very cool. Like these opportunities like didn't exist, but now they're here. And it's like, this is the new way the sport is growing, you know? And, you know, Joey, we're not dinosaurs by any means.
Sure.
But we did do something that most people did not do, which is wrestle in college.
Yeah.
Right? You could wrestle in high school. That's amazing.
Yes.
But that next little step made it way different.
Yeah. You lose more than like 90% of the competitors. And as I said, even at the junior college level, because of, you can look at it like within like the college wrestling dynamic, that it's like the lowest of the tiers. But at the same time, as I had mentioned, just as like a redshirt freshman who would have been like fourth on my junior college's roster, and it wasn't like I was anything special out of high school, but all of a sudden I'm like regularly beating these high school state placers, even when I'm still 18 years old. So like still technically old enough to be a high school student. It's not like I'm doing this like 10 years later, but it's like, oh wow. Yeah. Like the level is dramatically different. It really is. The ability to grow in that kind of environment is substantial. And I think one of the interesting things also about wrestling and jiu-jitsu, once again, because they're similar but different, and same thing with like how the cultures go, and that because like jiu-jitsu is a little bit more, a lot of times you're dealing with like privately owned academies. And so I always tell people that jiu-jitsu is a very like inclusive sport, in that like, you know, anybody can do it. That like so many of the people that train at our academy, we have moms, and we have the kids classes are so many different boys and girls, and it's different parents, and people have different things going on in their lives, but they come in and they have a fun time. And it's like jiu-jitsu is this cool additional thing that they do in their lives, where I look at wrestling, it's like it's more exclusive, because on any given college or high school wrestling team, there's only so many slots for varsity. And also just like the nature of the sport, because it's in a scholastic setting, that your coach isn't looking to like retain students and members. It's like, hey, this is how we do things. If you don't like it, you can get out of here. And every practice is an ass kicker.
So like jiu-jitsu is inclusive, right? Wrestling is up and out. You lose a match in jiu-jitsu, it's okay. You sign up for the next one the next week.
Yeah.
During wrestling season, you lose at a certain point, you're done. Your season is over.
Yes.
Right? And only the champions continue.
Yes.
And that's how like certain things go in our sport. And it's kind of ruthless. It's kind of like, you know, then as people are crying and all sorts of stuff, dude, you could have so many goals and not accomplish them. And it's like, it's a real, you know, sometimes I have to tell the high school kids, like, this is the time of like, wrestling will teach you like you could do everything right and still not to get the results that you wanted, right? And it's like,
because you have one shot. This is like you know, this is your only opportunity during these pivotal years. Where jiu-jitsu, you're how old now? If you don't mind me asking.
4,100.
4,100, and you're now like getting these opportunities to compete in Kazakhstan and everything like this. And if it didn't work out this year, you can try next year, and it's, you know, you can go well into your 40s and still get these opportunities where, as I said, when it comes to high school and college sports, it's like, hey, this is your year to do this.
You
if
can.
You don't win, this is your senior year. You're 22 years old. If you don't win this tournament right now, you don't qualify for the state championships. You don't qualify for the NCAA championships. And once again, like, not only is your season done, your career's done. You're now no longer a wrestler.
What are you fighting for? You're fighting for that All-American status.
Yeah.
You're fighting for that little like notch on your belt that like you could say that I did this, you know? And it's pretty cool. You guys like martial arts is a journey, you know? And me and Joey, like, we're like mid-tier wrestlers at best.
Yeah.
But like we each coached some champions, you know, I have a state champion, you know, it doesn't necessarily matter like what you accomplished, but like as a coach, you could do a lot more. And
Yeah.
you could influence a lot more people.
Well, it's a cool way to expand you can call it like your journey, because once again, we both got done wrestling at about 20 years old, and there's nowhere to really just casually wrestle. And it was just in the ability to, I mean, for me, it's like I never really had any plans of competing in jiu-jitsu. I was glad to be done competing. No matter, you have to love competing, because competing, even if you enjoy it, it kind of sucks. You're at a place all day, you're nervous. Sometimes you got to poop, and there's not a good stall to go into in the place that you're at, and
Lord have mercy.
you're looking at your competitor, and they got giant muscles, and it's this whole ordeal.
They hate you. They hate you for some reason.
But it was like, when I came and started training jiu-jitsu, I had no intention of competing. It's like, oh, cool. Finally, I get to do the thing I really enjoy doing, but I don't have to do the part that I don't enjoy doing. And somehow, some way, I still found myself competing, and it just like it still continues, because even when you think you want to get out, there's still a part of it that you absolutely love, and it's like it's hard to walk away from, and it's cool to see that.
What did you say, Jay? One time you said it was like a relationship.
Yes, I did. Oh my God, I said that back in college. The fact that you remembered, it's like a toxic relationship. It's that, like, because it is during your season, especially during wrestling. Once again, jiu-jitsu's fun. Jiu-jitsu, once again, because there's a business component of it, and classes need to be fun so that your paying members keep coming back, where wrestling doesn't need to be that. It's like, hey, we're here to win championships, and if you're not on board, like, get out of here. And in order to do that, like, every practice has to suck a lot. And I remember, like, every season, you're just like, fuck, when is this season over? I am like, this is so hard. I'm constantly stressed out. And then it's like your season ends, and a week later, you're like, oh my God, when does wrestling season start again? I miss it. And it's like this toxic relationship. Like, while you're in it, you just like, there's a level of like, oh my God, when is this thing going to end? But then as soon as it's done, you can't stop thinking about it and obsessing about it. And
we only wrestled in high school and college.
Yeah.
We weren't little kids wrestling.
Yes.
Which is a whole nother risk of burnout and all sorts of love, hate. And, for however many little kids start to however many keep it through, it's like, it's got to be like 5%, you know?
Yeah, I believe it's like the statistics show at the age of 14, it's 70% of youth athletes quit whatever sport they do. Not even the sport they do, that they quit youth sports altogether. And so it's like this interesting thing, because there's a level of like, man, I wish I started this when I was younger. And so many people that we know as like parents, like, I got to get my kid into these sports. And the truth is that in order to, like, at this point in life, especially if you want your kid to be like an Olympic gold medalist in wrestling, it's almost like a requirement that they have to start at 5 or 6. But
homeschool them.
Yeah.
Send them to LAJJ Club Fridays for wrestling class. I got them. But
at the same time, you also, in a way, risk burnout. And it's, even as like a coach, I think that's also like a cool subject for maybe another episode, because of both of us, the fact that we started wrestling at around 14 years old, and now both of us are about, like, you're a little over 40, I'm a little under 40. So we're looking at over 25 years of grappling and still being like on fire for it. And there are kind of like, how do you manage this as a long-term thing? Because of, the truth is, the vast majority, as I said, from people that start at 5 years old, by the time they're 14, it's like at least a 70% chance that they will no longer be doing the thing anymore. And so it's, I'm always kind of navigating like, wow, like, nurturing this as much as possible, because it's like the nature of wrestling and jiu-jitsu is that it's hard. There's no way around that it is hard work.
Yeah, dude.
But it has to be fun too.
The thing that we try to have is like authenticity, and that, like, if you're going to put in work, you're going to be good, but that means it's also going to suck, and your training partners are going to be good.
Yeah.
So like, we could either say that you're going to be a 2-year black belt and it is what it is, or like, you're going to have to go through the same hoops that we went through.
Yeah.
Blood, sweat, and tears, good days, bad days. And like, in 8 to 14 years, you might be a real black belt.
Yeah. And it's just, once again, like, what's also cool about it is going back into how, at 14 you have one win in a whole season against a nice young lady, and then all of a sudden, all these years later, you get to compete on behalf of Team USA on the world stage, and it's
Okay, and I'm still doing a wrestling camp Monday through Friday. That's not
yeah.
mine. I'm a student. I'm working out every day, getting hazed and have to ask for a water break and all sorts of nonsense,
And also,
So
it
never ends.
running your jiu-jitsu business, doing this podcast, running tournament companies, and it really does go to show that, especially if you're not achieving early success within wrestling or jiu-jitsu, that
Music, whatever it is, dude.
Stick with it. That, your big break maybe doesn't happen till you're 40 years old, and I do think that there's something to be said about having one win when you're 14 years old, which seems like a pretty substantial age, but we know people that their 8-year-old kid maybe competes 3 times and they haven't won anything. He's like, why hasn't my kid won anything yet? And it's like, well, it's part of the process. They could be an Olympic gold medalist.
Let me tell you the story about the man who beat the one girl.
Yeah, for real though. And it's like, it really is such an important thing to recognize, because it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. And it's like literally being in a marathon and being a half a mile in. It's like, why am I not in first place yet? And it's like, dude, like you got a lot of time to go.
Guys, if you get anything out of this podcast, these last 10 episodes, these last 10 hours, just don't quit. That's what we're getting after. Like you could have every obstacle in the world, go around it, go through it, figure it out, but don't quit, and don't quit on yourself. And just know that if somebody did it, you could do it too, or you could be the very first person to do it. You just got to have faith in yourself and see it through.
And that it's that once again, it's like a long game, that, that life is longer than you think. And it is like every individual tournament. This is like the thing that I'm always trying to convey to my kids, that it's like mastering having something be super important and simultaneously not that important. Because if it is, when you're signed up for a tournament, you should be doing all the right things to get ready for it. Like in your head, you should be visualizing and wanting to win, and, do working out beforehand, practicing right and sleeping well, and the nutrition and all this. But at the same time, when you get to that tournament, especially when, if you're a parent and your kid's 8 years old and, they just get submitted twice real quick, okay, that's part of the journey. And it's not like they've lost out on any opportunities. It really is just, it's a part of it. And if you can endure that, and I believe we talked about it on another podcast, as I said, if you could be willing to be what would happen if I just lost 100 matches? All right, and how going into sales, if you can get to those 100 no's, if you knew that your big yes was 100 no's away, you'd be pumped about every no. And it's kind of the same way. And it's obviously, yes, don't be pumped about losses, but it's if you can get out of the way and recognize that for most people, it's a part of the journey. And it's every loss is your child or yourself getting closer to that big dream win. If you knew it was only 100 losses away, you'd be pumped after every loss.
I have a buddy, his name is Mindset Mike. He's the mindset coach, The Unfair Advantage. And he spent a lot of time with Penn State, and he was very close to Cale Sanderson and the coaching staff and all that. And Cale would tell them right before the finals of the NCAA tournament, right? They're in the finals. He's like, go out there, do whatever you got to do, but just remember, tomorrow, nobody's going to remember this.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's let it go. It's just a moment of your life. And it's bigger. Your life is bigger than this single moment.
Yeah. And I feel it's almost there's a spiritual component to that as well. I remember, as I teaching the Wim Hof method, a lot of times, as people are breathing, you want them to do fully in and letting go. And I remember, there was a lady that said wow, it's almost like a metaphor for life. And I believe that. It's you need to be fully in whatever it is that you're doing, even just day-to-day life, being present, being fully in, but at the same time, simultaneously being surrendered to outcomes, because the truth is the outcome we don't control. What is in our sphere of control, and that is, how do we show up to practice? Are we doing the right work beforehand? And it's you do enough of that over a long enough period of time, the results will become just a byproduct of the
The habits
being
that you
fully
got,
in,
yeah.
but it is like it's such an important factor to, especially when you do lose, that like don't let it ruin your life. Don't let it be this huge thing. You could be sad about it, right? We all have expectations and setting goals, and once again, when it comes to athletic endeavors, there's like a finite amount of time that you are in a way dealing with, but at the same time, one example I remember is actually Morgan McIntosh. He was teaching a seminar, and I believe like on his goal list, he had become a 4-time NCAA national champion, and he went out and he had lost one of his matches at the NCAA like championships, and he immediately went to his goal list and he crossed off 4-time NCAA national championship and just put become a 3-time NCAA national champion. And I feel that, it's great to make goals and do everything you can to see them through. And sometimes things don't pan out the way that you want, but it is like always being flexible
It's a
and always
journey.
being
It's
able
a journey.
to adjust as you go.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Guys, if you like what you hear, click the subscribe.
Yeah.
$9.99 a month
We'll probably have like a Patreon aspect
for the OnlyFans.
Oh my gosh.
For the OnlyFans Ophelia.
Maybe we'll be on School or Patreon or something like that. I don't know if we'll be on OnlyFans, but yeah. Thank you guys for tuning in. This is our milestone 10th episode.
We're about to watch UFC 250 White House in a little bit. Just chilling on a Sunday.
Yeah.
Doing our thing.
I love it. All right, everyone. Have a good day. Peace.